For those of you that watch the Rodolfo Vieira, can you pull up the guy's name, man? Honestly, I can't remember what his name is. He's a pretty new guy.
Back in time. Which one?
That was like 3 weeks ago or something, 2 weeks ago. One of those shows. I can't remember the main event.
It wasn't the Usman card, was it?
I think it was, yeah. I think that's what it was.
Oh, yeah, it was the prelims, I remember.
Yeah, so Adolfo Vieira, who I'm very familiar with because he's a GF team guy, and I spent 3 years as a GF team instructor and student. And Adolfo Vieira is like the king of GF team, right? I mean, he's multiple time world champion. Jake, can you do me a favor when you have a sec and bring up Adolfo Vieira's Wikipedia page? I mean, he's a double gold ADCC champion. He's a multiple time ADCC champion in his own weight class. He's an IBJJF world champion. He became known as the black belt hunter, I believe, when he was going through the lower belts. I mean, fucking jacked, right? One of the biggest jiu-jitsu pedigrees to ever enter into MMA. He's up there with like Fabricio Verdum, Jacare, Hodger Gracie, the absolute like GOAT level BJJ. And for sure one of the greatest competitors of all time. And he fought against a purple belt who was not that touted, right? Not that touted, and ends up getting submitted by him. And there is so much martial arts wisdom to take from this fight that I really feel like I wanted to bring it up. First of all, just to set the stage, Jake, can you bring up Adolfo Vieira's Wikipedia?
Yep.
I mean, absolutely insane. Gold after another. He's young. He looks like a Greek god, right? Just jacked to the city.
There you go.
And, I mean, look at this shit. So that's his MMA career. Go up and to the right. Can
Is
you
that his
put it on the
MMA?
main as well?
No, that's his grappling, my god.
Oh, but there should be the medals if you go up and to the right. Yeah, it should be like...
That's his MMA.
Okay, go down a little further then, maybe.
It's just a lot of green saying win, basically.
Well,
I don't know if he's got the medals.
Well, I was trying to use this for dramatic effect, but it's failing in my face. Anyway, point is, one of the best ever in jiu-jitsu came to MMA. He was undefeated. He's had a few fights in the UFC. They haven't looked particularly great. He's a big, muscly guy, like built like Paulo Costa or something like that, right? Just jacked. And I mean, first of all, he burned out hard when he fought this guy. And this guy's a purple belt, right? And the thing that stood out to me that I wanted to talk to all you guys about is the difference between new school jiu-jitsu and old school jiu-jitsu. This was the thing that was playing in my mind as I watched this because I was an MMA fighter first and a wrestler first, right? So I sort of understand the limitations of jiu-jitsu, and I also understand the limitations of every martial art in isolation, right? And the thing is, when you get a very, very skilled jiu-jitsu player, multiple-time world champion, and you start teaching them MMA, you run up into a lot of hurdles. Okay, number one, jiu-jitsu people who are that top of the line are so used to submitting lower belts that they think they can just run through everybody. They think that if they get a hold of you, they're going to tap you. And a lot of times that can be true. In the case of Adolfo, before this, up until this point, he'd been undefeated and he pretty much tapped everybody, right? But the problem is, when that fails, he doesn't have a second or third set of skills to fall back on, right? Once he couldn't get the takedown, for example, and he's stuck on his feet, he's so much worse on his feet that he doesn't have another route to win, right? Short of like pulling guard and this guy's punching you, plus he's tired. And, it's one of the limitations of jiu-jitsu that you see early on. He was able to get the takedown early. He got the back. He was threatening a lot, but he got tired, right? And as soon as he started to get tired, it's like those belt ranks just started ticking down a little bit, right? And it got to the point where the other guy then started using his striking and setting up and getting takedowns and punching him and backing out and just pestering him the whole time when he's gassed. Now, the old school jiu-jitsu was used to, and you can listen to all the old school people, all the old Brazilians, right? Carlson Gracie, Elio Gracie, Royce Gracie, Hickson, you can listen to all of the old school people. They all tell you that jiu-jitsu's essential philosophy is in self-defense and Vale Tudo, which is MMA and self-defense. The old fights, when you watch the Gracie in challenge videos, remember those?
Yep.
Gracie in action, where they would challenge other martial arts to come to their dojo. They're all throwing punches on them. All of them. All the Gracie challenges, the reason why jiu-jitsu in part became huge in North America was because they started doing these Gracie challenges, where they would invite any other martial artist to come over. They would pay them like $5,000 if they'd win. And they would come, all the students would be around the wall in these fucking grainy 90s VHS videos. And Hickson did them, Hoyler did them, And they're not doing slap hands, fist bump jiu-jitsu. Punches are thrown all the time. Like when Helio Gracie was fighting Kimura in the 50s, and when he was going through, and they're filling up those stadiums, punches are being thrown. Right? The original old school jiu-jitsu is Vale Tudo self-defense. Self-defense first, Vale Tudo being MMA basically, right? And the old school philosophy of jiu-jitsu is neutralize your person, your opponent, drag them into use your defensive jiu-jitsu, get them tired, stick to them. Attrition. This is why the Gracies won. No time limits.
Yeah.
Right? Because they can take away the explosive power of the bigger, stronger guy, drag them into deep waters, neutralize them to the point that they can start to overcome. When they drag them, like they get them tired, and then they can box them up, kick them, get them tired, sweep them, get on top. I mean, this is old school jiu-jitsu, right? And I just found it fascinating that the black belt world champion multiple time thing got beat by old school jiu-jitsu from a purple belt who, if they slap hands, fist bump, rolled, Adolfo would fuck him up every time. If they rolled 100 times, if they rolled to 100 submissions, Adolfo would probably get 100.
Yeah.
99, like that, right?
Yeah.
But with MMA, with the fatigue, with the grappling, the wrestling, the stress of the strikes, all of these things, and the real issue with Adolfo, right, is he knows if he can get a hold of you, he can submit you. So he fights so hard to get a hold of you initially. But when that plan fails, he doesn't have the experience in the other areas to get over the hump. If his first thing fails, there's no plan B. There's no plan C. I get on top of you and I submit you. I sweep you and I submit you. I sweep you. I get guillotine you. Whatever. Right? It all involves that one thing.
Yeah.
And with the complexities of MMA, he just didn't have a plan for it. And also the fact that sport jiu-jitsu doesn't train strikes. It's not self-defense. They're not learning how to block and shield and slip inside and clinch. They're not doing any of that stuff. So it doesn't mean Rodolfo can't make adjustments. But it is a fascinating case study on that old school self-defense jiu-jitsu versus the modern sports jiu-jitsu, and how somebody who's way weaker in the jiu-jitsu that like 99% of the people listening to this podcast do, right? 99% of the people listening to this podcast are probably like slap hands, fist bump, gi, jiu-jitsu. They do some no-gi, right? Maybe occasionally they dip into a Muay Thai class or a boxing class, but they're probably not grappling with strikes. Right. What was your take on that, man? What did you think? Because I know you're a BJJ nerd too, right? So, like, were you kind of like couldn't believe Adolfo? Were you cheering for Adolfo because he's like an old school, like
obviously cheering for the BJJ guy, but then he just became, like you say, once the plan wasn't working, there's no backup plan, and he just stuck to the plan, and it was making him more and more tired and just not working, and we've all seen
and he submitted him.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we're not talking about... He submitted him.
But we've seen it in, like, everyone who trains BJJ's seen it and stuff like that, where a guy who's not trained for a few years, let himself out of shape, will show up. Or I've even seen it with black belts that have shown up out of shape in some places.
I've been that guy. I've been that guy. I'll just be honest with you right now.
And like a young, hungry blue belt or purple belt who's like, local champion or something like that, will actually take them to task and submit them, and it's nothing to do with skill level, it's all to do with cardio. And I think that was the big thing that won it for the other guy in the end, that the cardio paid out and he just didn't have it in the tank and was like, oh no. And
I'd like to give an additional layer of thought to cardio as well, right? Like there's two terms I hear tossed around in jiu-jitsu all the time. One is strength, the other is cardio, right? Now these are not what most people think that they are, right? First of all, you're definitely right. Cardio is huge, especially in MMA. The wrestling, the striking changes everything. So you need that very specific VO2 max type cardio, right? But the other element that's extremely important is efficiency. And there's and you're always like, you're like a little unicycle on a line, always balancing between cardio and efficiency. Because you can have amazing cardio and blow your load in 5 minutes if you're not efficient with your energy.
Yeah.
Right? Conversely, you can see some people who fight well into their old age. Yoel Romero is a great example. He's very efficient with his energy. He goes from inactivity to hyper explosion in a way that's unique to any other fighter I've ever seen.
Do you remember when he got Chris Weidman?
Yeah.
With the knee, he was just basically stood there, Nice.
Lyoto Machida too. Lyoto Machida was the same way. He lulls you to sleep with inactivity, which is what he was trying to do to Adesanya when they fought. and then he explodes viciously. And part of that is because he's being efficient with his energy.
Yeah.
He's got a fucking bulk jack body that super explosive, but it requires a lot of oxygen. So I just want to talk about that because a lot of times, if your cardio is good enough and you gas, like a lot of times that's the case with Conor McGregor. Like I believe he has good cardio. But like in the Nate Diaz fight, in particular the first one, but even the second one, he weathered it, but he did gas at points because he's so explosive. And that requires something, right? That requires fuel from the gas tank. If he had been more fit, like Nate Diaz is, first of all, he's a cardio machine, but he's loose, right? He's not trying to take your head off with those shots. And so he doesn't ever get tired. And you get those guys who are very, very efficient with their energy. And the other thing that I was going to say is strength.
Yeah.
You know, you roll with those guys. Like I always think about Sean, one of the brown belts that trains with us and one of the owners of Stronghold. If you roll with him, it feels like he's a fucking gorilla. He's so strong, right? Like, and that's the instinct. When someone grabs you like that, that's very, very good. It translates as strength, right? Like in your head, it feels like, he's so strong. I can't do shit. And there's an element of that can be true, but then there's the other element of like understanding the nuance of like manipulating the body and cutting off exits by body shifts, right? Like as soon as I feel you trying to hip escape, I pinch my elbow in my knee so there's no space for your hips to move, and then I turn your head the other way. And I can do that lightly, but
It
so
feels
tight.
smothering.
You can tell if I'm gooning you, right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm putting that kind of shoulder pressure and side control where you're fucking like I'm just crushing your face, you can achieve the same effect without like putting tons of power in it, but you can feel when those guys are just like way overcompensating and you're like, fuck dude, you're like, as opposed to the guys who just have it locked.
Yeah.
And it's just there. And they're not like squeezing with all their might, but your fucking head's not moving. You
But
know?
with that one, sometimes when you get like the big guys and they're absolutely crushing you, you sort of thinking, all right, they're smashing into me, but they're gonna, like you say, the efficiency's not working because they're squeezing. So eventually they're gonna gas, and then I'll be able to work maybe. But with Sean, for example, 'cause he's never squeezing, so I'm never thinking, Sean's gonna get tired in a minute. I might be able to get out of this. I'm just thinking, shit.
Yeah. But I mean, if you were ignorant to the sport, that would feel like he's the strongest human ever.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he's got really great weight distribution and balance. His hips are strong, sprawls are good, all that kind of stuff. So when you get that, the immediate thing is for that to translate as strength. As a lot of people think cardio translates to like your ability to go, which it does, but there's a lot of other layers there.
Yeah.
Right? Your diet, all that shit, but biggest one being efficiency. And Adolfo has just not he's not efficient. That's the biggest one. He's got a lot of muscle mass, which isn't necessarily a deal breaker, right? That's why I think it really boils down to efficiency. He might need to lean down a little bit, take off like a pound or two. But I mean, I think he's in good shape. This is what I'm saying. Like, you're like, how can you gas? Everybody's talking shit to him. How can you gas? In a grappling match? So the first 4 minutes were only jiu-jitsu. And then after the fifth minute, he was done. Right? He was just done. And you're like, how can a jiu-jitsu world champion go in there who does 10-minute rounds, or sometimes longer, gas after 4 minutes of jiu-jitsu? But it's the efficiency, it's how much he was fighting for it, it's how much he was quitting, because that's plan A. Plan B, there's no plan B.
Yeah.
Like, drag me to the ground and submit you is my only plan. And I love when these fights come around. These jiu-jitsu fighters, when they get tapped out by the lighter guy. I don't care who. It could be like my favorite fighter of all time, but if I saw a blue belt, I remember this guy, Mackin Semzer. I don't know if you remember him. He's an old school guy, fought in the WC. He had a triangle choke on, I can't remember his name. Some like multiple time world champion in jiu-jitsu. Triangle choke. He was a blue belt from his back.
Yeah.
Because the he threw an elbow or something like that, and then brought the hand up, and boom, just shot it up. And like the Brazilian guy just couldn't believe that he had the audacity to try to triangle him, right? And all of a sudden he's in it. And it's just different when you fight, and I love watching these kind of things. And I talk about wrestling all the time, and I made a little shit post about the BJJ people, because I said, name one jiu-jitsu guy who just ever went through, name one in the history of the modern era, not Hoist Gracie right, or Hickson, the modern era where people know other things. Name one pure jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu only guy who ever got a UFC championship. There's one, Fabricio Verdum. But the reason why he was able to is because if his jiu-jitsu failed, he was okay still. He wasn't like only forcing that. Right, that wasn't his only way out. He developed insanely good striking. Right, knocked out Mark Hunt with a flying fucking knee. He like knocked out a bunch of really good people. His hands were ridiculous. So like he was not a one-trick pony. But Roger Gracie, the GOAT, Marcelo Garcia, Andre Galvão, right? Fucking Jacare. I mean, who else, should I go on? Who else went from like top of the tier jiu-jitsu to MMA?
Yeah.
All lost. No one ever became a major world champion in the UFC. You get a little bit in Bellator, some of the smaller organizations you get, but never in the UFC. But the wrestlers, you want to list the wrestlers? I mean, dude, the list is fucking endless.
Yeah.
So
It was, and I forget who said it, but someone made the point that like it doesn't mean jiu-jitsu's no good in MMA though, because if you don't know jiu-jitsu, you're gonna have serious problems if the other person does in MMA. So you've got to know it, or at least know how not to fall into the traps and stuff like that.
how much jiu-jitsu do you think Derek Lewis knows? How much jiu-jitsu do you think Francis Ngannou knows? How much?
Yeah.
Now that's a stupid point that I'm making. Of course you're right. I'm trolling a little bit, but my point is like you think like they can get to that level with that kind of deficiency in jiu-jitsu. Part of that is the athlete thing. They're freak fucking athletes. They learn how to do anti-jiu-jitsu. So they're learning it,
Yeah.
but they're not learning that like, okay, I'm in half butterfly guard. I'm going to try to invert. I'm going to K guard, roll through inside fucking heel hook, back take, crab right. They're not doing any of that shit. They're doing like underhooks, sprawl, fucking bong, front headlock, spin around to the back. You know what I mean? It's not like... They're not fucking. Let me do my deep half Barambolo. Fucking, none of it.
No.
It never happens in MMA, ever. Like you just don't ever fucking see it. You see it in like the low levels and the amateur levels and all that kind of stuff. And I'm a jiu-jitsu nerd. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that shit. But the proof is, what is there of any proof of more absolute than that?